Welcome to This Explainer. I am so glad you're joining us today. We're going to tackle a topic that honestly generates a ton of anxiety and confusion in the news: endocrine disruptors. Now, my goal today is absolutely not to add to the panic. Instead, we want to replace all that fear with a really clear, grounded understanding. We're going to build a mental model together, focusing on signals, interference, and exposure, so you can actually think sensibly about this whole issue without getting totally lost in the scientific jargon. Sound good? Let's get into it.
Okay, let's kick things off by completely shifting our perspective. Usually, when we hear the phrase toxic chemicals, we instantly imagine some kind of poison that just destroys whatever it touches, right? But what if the chemicals around us aren't just blunt toxins? What if, instead, they're actually more like confused messengers? To really grasp what endocrine disruptors are, we first have to understand how our bodies process information on a day-to-day basis.
Section 1. The body's messaging system. How the body functions. Before we can talk about how things go wrong, we've got to establish the baseline of a healthy body. And right at the heart of this is your endocrine system. You can think of it as the body's internal communication network. Basically, your glands release hormones directly into your bloodstream, and those hormones act as chemical messengers. They travel all throughout your body to carry vital, specific instructions to target cells, which regulate some incredibly crucial functions. We're talking about literally everything from your growth and development to your metabolism, your sleep cycle, and even your reproductive system. Now, this system isn't just a simple on and off light switch. It's way more dynamic than that. It's actually a lot like the coordinators of a bustling shipping port. You've got dozens of different jobs happening all at the exact same time. Ships are coming in, cargo's being moved around, trucks are loading up, and the only way the whole operation works is if the right signals keep everything moving in the proper order. It is a highly complex, beautifully orchestrated network.
Section 2. Signal interferers. Agents of interference.
So endocrine disruptors are exactly that. They are agents of interference. They don't just poison the port, they actually mess up the communications. Some of them mimic a hormone, so they act like a fake key that just happens to fit a lock, causing a door to swing open at completely the wrong time. Others actually block a hormone. That's like someone standing right in a doorway, so the real message can't even get through. And others might change production entirely, essentially turning the volume dial way up or way down on how much hormone your body makes. They can even change how hormones are transported or how sensitive your cells are to them. The big takeaway here, they confuse both the timing and the message.
Section 3. Where do they come from? Common everyday sources.
Let's take this out of the abstract for a second, because these chemicals actually show up in very common everyday sources. We're talking about things like plastics and food packaging, which often contain additives like BPA or phthalates just to make them flexible or durable. We see them in personal care products, cosmetics, everyday cleaning products, pesticides, and believe it or not, even regular house dust. Now take a deep breath. This is not a scavenger hunt where you need to run around and fear every single product in your home. The point we're making here is simply that endocrine disruptors are deeply connected to modern materials and processing.
And that brings us to a really crucial point you need to remember. Exposure is not the same as effect. I'll say that again. Just because a chemical happens to exist in a bottle, a container, or your environment does not automatically mean it is causing you harm. It all builds into a logical chain. You see, for a chemical to actually matter, it has to complete a specific sequence. It starts at the source, where it's naturally found. Then there has to be exposure, meaning it actually has to get inside your body, whether you breathe it in, eat it, or absorb it through your skin. After that comes its internal behavior, what it actually does once it gets inside. And finally, the biological effect, how it physically changes your hormone signaling. The thing is, if that chain is broken anywhere along the way, or if the exposure is just incredibly minimal, the effect might literally be non-existent.
Section 4. Timing and context. Why tiny amounts matter.
This addresses a major point of confusion. Why can tiny amounts sometimes be a really big deal? We're so trained to think of harm like a giant poison spill, where more chemical naturally equals more damage. But remember, hormones don't work by bulk, they work by timing. So think of it less like a massive poison spill and more like a baby monitor. You don't need a deafeningly loud sound in the house to get a response, right? A tiny, quiet little cry on that monitor at the exact right moment will wake you up immediately. Because the body is constantly listening for these tiny changes, a small outside signal arriving at the wrong time can disrupt the whole system.
And because timing is absolutely everything, the exact same chemical exposure affects different people very differently. The outcome changes based on age and developmental stage. Windows like fetal development, infancy, and puberty are highly sensitive because the body is actively building its systems during those times. It also depends on the route and the duration of exposure. It depends on whether someone is pregnant. And let's face it, real life is messy. We almost never encounter just one chemical in isolation. We're usually exposed to a whole mixture from dust, packaging, and fragrances all at once.
So, when we use the word disruptor, it rarely means an instant injury. It's not this single devastating blow to the system. It's actually much more like a bridge under repeated small stress. One single car driving over a bridge doesn't damage it at all, but constant stress in the wrong places, day after day over time, well, that can cause structural strain. The body might compensate for a while, but it's that cumulative exposure combined with biological sensitivity that really actually matters.
Section 5. Panic to Power, a reliable mental model.
Okay, let's pivot now. Let's translate those scary, vague questions into practical, everyday assessments. When you hear a terrifying headline and instantly wonder, oh no, where is it coming from? You're really just asking about the source. When you ask, how does it get in? You're assessing the exposure route. And when you wonder, what does it actually do? Well, you're looking at hormone interference. Look at that. You are now thinking exactly like a signal reader. Let's quickly summarize this core system logic. Step 1. Materials contain chemicals. Step 2. People encounter them through use. Step 3. Some of those chemicals enter the body. And Step 4. Some interfere with hormonal signaling. Think about a simple plastic container for a second. The plastic itself isn't the whole story. The real issue is how it's used. If you repeatedly heat it up in the microwave or use it to store fatty foods, you actually increase the migration of those chemicals into your food. The condition of use completely changes the exposure pathway, so paying attention to those conditions is literally your best tool. By remembering our anchor of signal, interference, and exposure, you now have a solid framework to confidently navigate this topic. You can separate the actual mechanism from all the media hype and make sensible, informed choices for yourself. Thank you so much for exploring this explainer with me today. Next time you see one of those scary headlines, don't panic, but don't just dismiss it either. Just take a breath and ask yourself, what signal might be affected? How does the exposure actually happen? And when does it matter most?